All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating historical analysis from our source material. It takes a unique moment of post World War II American power and connects it directly to a very modern impending reality, the dawn of artificial intelligence. It's a compelling look at how history's ultimate test of restraint might actually be the exact blueprint we need for the future.
Section 1, the ultimate monopoly.
To really wrap our heads around this paradigm shift, we first need to look back to 1945, right at the end of the Second World War. The source highlights a pretty blunt observation from Elon Musk. He points out that the US possessed a weapon no civilization in history had ever held. Practically speaking, this meant they had the absolute power to conquer anywhere they wanted, without even risking their own soldiers on the battlefield. As he puts it, they had nukes and nobody else did. So, the crucial point the text is making here is that this wasn't just some standard military advantage. It was a total monopoly on destruction. Think about what that actually means for a second. No rival power to check them, no immediate consequence, and literally no limit to what they could have claimed.
Section 2, breaking history's rules.
What's really interesting is how you compare this to the historical norm. If you look at past empires, the rulebook was pretty simple. When they held overwhelming power, they took until there was absolutely nothing left to take. But in 1945, America had a greater military advantage than all past empires combined, and yet they made the active choice to rebuild the very nations they had just defeated.
Returning to Musk's commentary, the source points out his observation that this decision to pour resources into rebuilding Europe and Japan was just highly unusual. He calls it almost unprecedented behavior because it completely flips the script on how human conflict had worked for millennia. But the author of our source text actually goes a step further. Look at this number, 5,000. The argument here is that it wasn't just almost unprecedented. According to the text, this exact behavior, a conquering nation holding the power to take everything but choosing restraint and rebuilding over domination, hadn't happened a single time in 5,000 years of recorded civilization. Not once.
Section 3, enemies to allies.
Let's look at the on-the-ground results of that choice. The source gives us 3 wild proof points. First, Germany transformed from absolute ashes into Europe's economic engine in just 1 generation. Second, Japan went from unconditional surrender to becoming the 3rd largest economy on Earth. And third, which is maybe the most vivid, by 1948, just 3 short years post-war, America was organizing massive airlifts to fly food directly into Berlin. They were feeding the capital of the country that had just tried to end the free world. Enemies literally became allies. Now, framing this impartially, the source definitely acknowledges a common critique. Of course, America has done bad things. Every nation on Earth has blood in its history. The text isn't denying that at all. But it argues that you have to look at the whole track record. The defining metric of a nation is what it chooses to do when absolutely nobody in the world has the power to stop them. Section 4, shaping the modern world. This specific decision to feed and rebuild enemies didn't just stay in the 1940s. The text asserts it fundamentally reshaped our modern global systems. It established the free markets and open borders for trade we know today. It fostered democracies taking root outside of Europe, and ultimately it helped lift billions of people out of poverty over the following half-century. So the massive takeaway from the first half of our source material is this. America's most powerful historical act wasn't the scientific achievement of building the bomb. It was having the absolute power to take everything and deliberately choosing not to. It's a legacy of restraint that the author claims critics have simply never matched.
Section 5, the final test, AI.
Okay, so why are we analyzing a post-World War II decision today? Well, the source argues this 1945 precedent applies urgently to right now. We are standing on the edge of a brand new monopoly. Artificial intelligence is about to hand a very small group of people a power advantage so vast, it's going to make that 1945 nuclear monopoly look completely primitive by comparison. We're talking about an unprecedented level of influence over economies, information, and maybe even human agency itself.
It's a pretty chilling modern parallel. By putting these two eras side by side, the text frames 1945 as humanity's first test of absolute unchecked power, and we passed it through an unprecedented choice of restraint. But AI? The source frames that as the last test. The stakes are higher, the power is infinitely more complex, and this time the monopoly won't necessarily be held by a nation-state, but by a concentrated few.
Which brings us to the conclusion of our explainer and the source's provocative final thought. This overwhelming AI power isn't a hypothetical anymore. It is going to exist. The tech is already accelerating. So, keeping the lessons of 1945 in mind, we are left to seriously ponder one final vital question. When this new ultimate monopoly fully arrives, who holds it? And will they have the wisdom to choose restraint, just like history showed was possible once before? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking those big questions.